Moving down the line, next is Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And I want to just echo the acknowledgement of the land that we're on, the Kwamandun First Nation and Tanquachan Council. And I'm very pleased to see such a great turnout. And I think this is an indication of how engaged Canadians are in this election and the critical issues that we are facing as a country. To back up a little bit, my history in the Yukon goes back 30 years. In 1995, I came here as a doctor, a general practitioner, and my background before that was of medicine, where I've served in various parts of the country and various parts overseas since graduating in the early 1980s. So I've seen a lot of this country. I've seen a lot internationally. I worked in international relief, worked in underprivileged areas, both inner city Canada and rural and northern Canada. My first foray into the north was to Inuvik, where I spent a year in the mid-80s, and I think that left an imprint on me that would stay for a long time. And ended up with my arrival in Whitehorse, where as a general practitioner and then emergency practitioner, and finally in the field of public health, where I was Chief Medical Officer of Health for 13 years. And so that service that I learned, service to Yukoners, which is both on an individual level, later on a community level, is something that I took to heart. And when I had an opportunity to run in the 2021 election, I thought this was a way that I could bring some of the lessons learned from serving Yukoners to the national stage, and have had an amazing experience representing Yukon over 3.5 years through some very challenging times. Sometimes it felt like there was a crisis every week that we had to navigate coming out of the pandemic, and then many of the economic challenges following that. We're still facing multiple crises, and now on top of that, we're facing a huge threat to our economic sovereignty, if not to our national sovereignty, from an adversarial U.S. government under the new Trump administration. This is showing. This is throwing certainly tremendous challenges from us, many of which will be reflected in the questions and answers to come. So I'm very pleased to be here. I'm ready to continue to offer my services to Yukoners and to be a voice for the Yukon as Yukon's next MP. Thank you.
And Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine McCallum. I'm your NDP candidate in this election. I also moved here 18 years ago, probably the same day as Gabrielle, with my 2 very young children. And I recently became a Canadian citizen last July. And when I became a Canadian citizen, I decided that not only did I want to vote and participate in this democracy, as a voter, I also wanted to participate in this democracy in another way, in a more meaningful way, and that is why I'm running as your NDP candidate in this election. I'm running because I want to make sure the voice of Yukoners is brought to the table in Ottawa. I'm here to work for you and not to support tax cuts for billionaires and subsidies for big corporations. As your MP, I will work hard to bring costs down and make life more affordable and easier for Yukoners. Our team will lower the cost of housing, make sure that everyone has a family doctor, and put a price cap on groceries. As a single parent who has raised 2 kids in the Yukon for the last 16 years, I understand firsthand the struggles that a lot of Yukoners are facing today. It's harder to make ends meet. It's getting harder and harder to afford a home or to find a place to rent. And it's harder than ever to get the health care you need. I was an airline worker and a member of Unifor for 10.5 years. And for the past 7 years, I've been a member of the Public Service Alliance of Canada at Yukon University. I know what it's like to be bullied by management And I know the strength that comes from having a union behind you to push back against that. I was working for Jazz Aviation when the Stephen Harper government legislated us back to work before we even had a chance to go on strike. We had a 2-tier wage agreement, and I was earning the top tier, and management tried to push me out in favor of lower wage workers. That wasn't fair for the workers being paid less to do the same job, and it wasn't fair for me because I was a target. We need strong unions and collective agreements to ensure that workplaces are safe and fair and democratic. I'm running because I care about this community. I'm running because I want to work for you, and I know what it's like to work as hard as you can and still go backwards. The NDP has a strong, proven track record of working for you. We fought for dental care, we fought for pharmacare, we fought for affordable childcare, we fought for anti-scab legislation, and we won, and we're going to keep going. So this election, I'm asking for your vote so we can keep building on our work to make lives better for Canadians. Thank you.
We will now move into the first part of our agenda, where candidates will respond to a series of pre-formed questions. These questions were informed by input from Yukon workers, affiliate unions, and the Canadian Labour Congress. So the ground rules for the questions are as follows. The clock is visible to all candidates, and our timekeeper on site will keep that moving. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to the question. And we are going to continue to rotate. I think it's clockwise for the audience. This next question will start with Hanley, and then moving to NDP, and then we'll come over to the green this way. So I think that's your clockwise. Yes, there you go. So question number 1. With nearly half of the Canadians living paycheck to paycheck and a growing gap between worker wages and corporate profits, what's your party's plan to support families and address the cost of living? And we're going to start with Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
Thank you. Thank you for this really important question. And I would say that next to tariffs and Trump and housing, affordability and the high cost of living is definitely the most common issue that I'm hearing at the doors. And we know that the cost of living has many drivers, including the effects of the COVID pandemic and the after effects on global supply chains, labor supply, global inflation, geopolitical instability, and wars, all of that. So we know that Canadians and Yukoners are feeling the pressure from this cost of living crisis, and we know that in the coming years of economic threats from the Trump administration, things could well get worse. I remember a few conversations in the last few days about retirees who are worried about their savings now because of the market instability from the Trump threats. And along with the other candidates, I had the chance to visit the Yukon Food Bank, where dedicated staff and volunteers are working and doing amazing work, but serving many more clients and customers who are just trying to get some extra food on the table to offset some of the daily living expenses. So in terms of remedies, I'll mention a few areas. Both the Liberal and Conservative parties are proposing tax cuts to address some of the immediate pocketbook needs of Yukoners. And so we have a newly announced middle-class tax cut under Mark Carney's leadership, and that will be saving two income families up to $825 annually. And that's a 1% marginal tax rate. And this contrasts to the Conservative 2.5% tax cut, which is a larger cut, but will definitely put at risk many of the programs that we depend on tax income to support. Mark Carney puts values first, markets second, and I would love to have the time to address some of those values that he describes. But fairness, responsibility, and sustainability are some of those. We do have a commitment to the ongoing programs that we have put in place for affordability, such as the $10 a day childcare program, the Canada Child Benefit, and newly the Canada Dental Care Plan. Food security is also a large part of how we address affordability. And again, many great community initiatives are in place, such as the YNFED food program, school food program, that has had significant federal support through Jordan's Principle. Other funding to food affordability and food sovereignty, helping communities and the Yukon to be able to produce more food, supporting the agri-food industry. These are some of the areas where we are able to support. Thank you.
Next is Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. So I was a single parent here for 16 years. I was a single parent from the time my kids were 2 and 4. It's not an easy thing to be a single parent. Many of you probably know this. There were many years where I struggled to pay the bills because I was working low and minimum wage jobs for, well, ever. I've had to borrow money from my kids to pay the bills, and I know I'm not the only one who's ever had to experience this. It isn't dignified, and it isn't fun when your children are relying on you to be the one who has your ducks in a row and is providing security and safety for them, and you have to ask them for their money so that you can provide security and safety for them. I want everyone to have the dignity of a good paying job and access to the financial supports that they need to be able to provide dignity and security for their families. The NDP will introduce a guaranteed basic income to ensure that no one gets left behind. For folks who are working and not getting ahead, we need to make life more affordable. We need free dental care for everyone. We need to expand the pharmacare program so that people can have life-saving medications when they need it and not have to choose between putting food on the table or taking their medication. We need a whole suite of housing measures so that housing is made affordable and accessible to everyone. And we need a cap on prices for essential groceries. In order to fund all of this, we need to make sure that massive corporate profits are taken care of. We need to close the tax loopholes and get rid of offshore tax havens so that everyone at the top is paying for the services that we need down below. We need to use the billions of dollars in new revenues that we would get from closing tax loopholes and making large corporations pay their fair share into the system to fund services for you and your families. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
So to address the cost of living, first let's talk about taxation. And at the Green Party, we do have a plan to remove the federal income tax for the first $40,000 of income. Right now, it's about $15,000. We want to raise that to $40,000. So that means more money in your pocket. And at the Green Party, we also want to close the loophole and make sure the loophole that the big corporations are using to not pay the fair share of taxations. And there's loopholes and intricate schemes that at the Green Party we really want to work on that so they do pay the fair share. Let's talk about food price. And so we do know that there's many things that influence our food price. And two of those things are climate change disruption and the high fuel cost. And at the Green Party, we want to work on a clean energy transition. And when we do that, we do minimize the disruption on these two things I mentioned, the high fuel cost and the disruption to grow food from climate change. And so these are two areas very important to work on, and it's part of our clean energy transition. Electric bill, in the Yukon, we've seen our electric bill going up in the last few years, and that's something I hear a lot, door knocking and speaking with Yukoners. And once again, our clean energy transition is here to help with your electric bill, so we can get rid of these diesel generators are expensive to run. And unlike fuel, wind, solar, and hydro, they don't depend on what's happening in Washington, D.C. or in Ottawa. At the Green Party, we also want to introduce a guaranteed livable income. So when people are facing with all kinds of emergency in their lives, they do know that they have the income for their basic necessities. And housing, of course. I do know that we will talk about housing later on, and my position is different from the two other candidates here at the table. I'm not offering extravagant promises or tax cut gimmicks, but a way to look at the problem differently, and with also a different approach to fixing these problems.
All right, question number 2, and the order for this one will be starting with NDP, and then the Green Party, and then Liberals will go last. So question number 2, our healthcare system is under strain. Chronic understaffing is putting immense pressure on our public healthcare system, and many Yukoners still face barriers to care. How would your party work with the territory to improve public health care and support the healthcare workers? And starting with Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. I feel this issue pretty personally because I don't currently have a family doctor. My doctor left the territory a year ago, and there was nobody to replace her, so she left hundreds of people without a family practitioner. I find that it's impossible to get into the walk-in clinic because if I don't call it exactly 8:45 and 22 seconds, I can't get an appointment that day, and it feels to me like the wrong thing to do to turn up to the ER to get a prescription for antibiotics for a cold because it clogs up the system, and it just feels so badly wrong to do that in the ER. My family and I have been struggling to navigate the mental health care system for the last 10 years. Both of my kids have some mental health care challenges, and I've also had mental health care challenges as a result of being a single parent of 2 kids who have mental health care challenges. And it has been exhausting and challenging and debilitating and difficult and expensive, and something that I hold deeply as a concern in my heart for not just myself, but anyone else who is struggling with children or family members who are going through the same kind of challenges. It's just really hard to get affordable, accessible healthcare when you need it in a crisis. Nobody should have to wait for 2 to 6 months to get health care when they're in a crisis. So the NDP has a comprehensive plan to address the healthcare problems that we face here in the Yukon. Firstly, we would like to create a pan-Canadian licensing system for healthcare workers so that doctors and nurses and other workers can practice where they are needed most without having to jump through massive red tapes. We have a plan to train more doctors from the north and support them to stay here, giving grants to doctors who commit to practicing in the north, increasing indigenous representation in healthcare, to streamline credentials for internationally trained doctors and nurses so that they can come here without having to spend years going through a system to get accredited, especially doctors from the US, because it seems that everybody wants to come to Canada right now. I don't blame them, I did. Reduce paperwork and red tape so that healthcare workers can focus on the care instead of the red tape and the administration of their jobs. and to increase the federal health transfers by 1%. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
I will mention housing yet again, because when we fix our housing, we are in much better position to attract and retain our healthcare staff. So let's really fix this. At the Green Party, we want to make sure that everyone has access to a family doctor. And at the primary care level, so I'm talking about family doctor, but it can be a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. And right now, we have the Canadian Health Act, where the federal is working alongside the provincial and territorial government to set priorities. And at the Green Party, our priority is a family doctor for everyone. And we do know that when we do have access to a family doctor, we catch problems early on, and we avoid this downward spiral of needing more costly and specialized care. And we see that happening in mental health, in substance abuse, senior care, and chronic disease management, for example. There's many more. And this is very draining and demoralizing on our healthcare staff to see that their patients don't have access to the care that they need. And so right there, how can we make our current staff happier? And it's to provide a family doctor for everyone. We do know that prevention is always the best course of action. It's very cost effective and it prevents suffering. And also we do know that immigration can and will help us to fill staff shortage in healthcare. We do want skilled healthcare workers to work here in the Yukon. So let's send a clear message about that we do want highly skilled healthcare workers to come in the Yukon. Thank you.
Brendan Hanley, Liberals.
First, I want to thank Kat for describing how it really is to be a patient, and that took a lot of courage, Kat. But that is the experience that too many people are now going through. It didn't used to be like this. When I was a doctor first here 30 years ago on a locum, I was actually told that I could come for a locum, but don't expect to stay here because we have enough doctors. Thank you very much. But this has been also coming. I mean, this is with an increasing population here, with an aging of the healthcare workforce. We have this has been predicted for at least 20 years. Unfortunately, no level of government has adequately responded. So now it is at a crisis level that was catapulted by the effect of the pandemic, and which caused many healthcare workers to go into retirement early or not choose to prolong their work career. I was on the Parliamentary Health Committee, so one of the things I did was bring the healthcare workforce crisis as a motion to be studied. And this is what we took on shortly after I was elected in the months following. And there is now a published report with recommendations. And so what is the federal role, and how do we support the provinces and territories? Many of the recommendations are around modernizing healthcare data, so we can actually track medical information and track our healthcare workforce adequately measure, so we can know exactly where the shortages are. We need to have enhanced credentialing and mentoring of not only international graduates, but Canadians who study overseas and want to come back, whether that's in nursing or medicine or other healthcare professions. We need to maximize the scope of each member of the health profession, pharmacists, physiotherapists, rehab, mental health counselors, and do our best to support team-based care. We need to support licensing mobility, and we need to look at models of care that actually work very well, models of innovation and care. We even have in the Yukon community-based models that are actually working well for those communities that we can enhance and expand upon. So there's a federal role in helping to scale up and share innovative practices. There's a lot to do. In addition to maintaining the recent programs that we've had introduced, dental care and pharmacare. In my last 9 seconds, I'll give a nod to Gabrielle on the need for prevention, and that means investing in our youth, in recreation and mobility, in many other.
All right, question number 3. And this time we're going to be turning your clock the other way. So the order of the candidates will be the Green Party, NDP, and actually Brendan Hanley will end up with the last word again. So it's just the way it works out. So question number 3. Housing affordability is at a crisis point. Yukon has a 1.6% vacancy rate in rental housing. And in the fourth quarter of 2024, listed condo apartments were selling for over $600,000. Most of us know a worker who had to decline or leave a job because they could not afford or find a place to live in our territory. So what is your plan to address the core housing need and make housing more affordable and available for all residents? And starting us off will be Gabrielle Dupont, the Green Party.
So first, we need to recognize that we do need more public housing units built. So past governments have not kept pace with the demand, and so at the Green Party, we do want to see actions on that front. And we want to make sure that we know what affordability is. And at the Green Party, affordability is when you don't spend more than 30% of your income on housing. And so when we spend public money on housing projects, it needs to fit that definition. And so I hear the other parties promising, millions of new homes being built in the next few years. And there are reasons why they're not being built right now. And I'm afraid maybe might not be built in the future. I work in the building industry, and so I see what's going on. And the reason why we're not building affordable homes right now is because there is very little business case for the building industry to do it. And when I'm talking about affordable homes, I'm talking about houses, about apartment buildings, about mobile home. We used to have a wide range of housing options in the Yukon at a wide range of prices too, and we don't see that anymore. As a Green MP, I would love to change this. And so how do we change this? We sit down with local governments and the building industry and we talk. We look at how does it look like to have a business case for them to build affordable homes for us. And we can start talking about land development. Do our local government needs support for with their capacity to get projects out the door for the land aspect? But also, do we need to have conversations with the industry about building relaxation, about regulation relaxations? These are conversations that we do need to have very soon. And so let's have this conversation and let's go at the root cause of this problem, because if we don't, I'm afraid we won't see much progress on this very critical issue in the Yukon. And Yukoners are pretty tired of inactions. We cannot wait to have affordable homes being built in the Yukon. Thank you.
Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. So this morning I was scrolling through Facebook because why? And because that's what I do. And I was on Facebook Marketplace, and there was yet another person from Alberta saying that they have been offered a job in the Yukon and they are looking for housing. And does anyone know an agency that they can contact? Does anyone know anyone with any links or leads to a house that they could live in, because they have this job to come to and they have a family to house? And the comments section is always a very interesting place. Why would you accept a job if you don't have housing? Good luck with that. And other such comments that are not necessarily community-based responses. I feel like the housing crisis here is creating anger and fear and resentment, and it makes it difficult for us as Yukoners to embrace and support each other and new Yukoners. I don't think that's a particularly healthy place for a community to be at or be in. It makes me really sad. I have 2 children in their early 20s, one of whom's girlfriend had a baby last Sunday, so I'm a new grandparent. And both of my children live in the respective basement suites of myself and my ex-husband because they cannot afford to leave home. I think that leaving home and becoming an independent adult on your own is a rite of passage that I was privileged to have, and my children and their generation don't have that, and I think that's a tragedy. I think a good job should be enough to get you and your family a decent home, but that hasn't been the case for many, many years. I know that some people have double incomes in their household, and they still can't afford to rent or buy a home. People are working multiple jobs just to keep up, and if you're paying rent, how are you going to save money for a down payment on a home? So for renters, we would introduce a national renters' bill of rights to protect every tenant from unfair rent hikes, from rent evictions, from dem-evictions, and other unfair practices. The NDP would build 100,000 new publicly owned, rent-controlled apartments on public land across the country, and I would fight to make sure that some of those were built in the Yukon. We will fund nonprofits like Safe at Home and Habitat for Humanity and the Community Land Trust to build homes that people can afford. We need NGOs to assist with building truly affordable homes that remain affordable because they're not subject to market fluctuation. For homeowners, the increased interest rates have really affected whether people can even qualify for mortgages these days. I know I had a lot of trouble 16 years ago, and it's just ridiculous right now. So the NDP would provide low-interest government-backed loans through the CMHC so that people can afford to buy a home and more easily qualify for a mortgage. And
Brendan Handley, the Liberal Party.
Thank you. In the 2021 campaign, housing was one of the most frequent topics I heard at the door, and in this campaign it remains at the top or near the top of the list. We've seen significant investments in the Yukon, many recent announcements, but still housing remains out of reach for many, either due to lack of enough houses for our growing population or the cost of buying a house that is out of reach for many. And it is a sad thing to see young people who are living still at home with their parents who are losing hope for the ability to buy a house. So this is definitely one of the biggest challenges we face as a territory. I think we've made a lot of progress over the last few years, and since I've been MP, I've been pleased to take part in major announcements. There's, for instance, Project 1096 in Whistlebend, which is the Community Land Trust. 32 affordable units. There's the partnerships with Kwanlundun First Nation and Tan Kwachan Council on housing projects. There's the Housing Accelerator Fund, which helps to get rid of some of those barriers that Gabrielle was describing that are specific for each community. And several communities have received Housing Accelerator funding. Also energy retrofits and other housing improvements to kind of resuscitate older housing and make it more affordable to live in. And then the Whistlebend Winter Crossing project, in addition to Cornerstone, Jekyll Street, the Safe at Home, and 408 Alexander. So many projects underway, but there was such a backlog that we need to continue with that same energy and pace. So the Liberal housing plan Mark Carney introduced as a $25 billion fund. Among the features, it's really to get the federal government back in the business of building homes. It's designed around helping to develop innovative Canadian-built prefab housing, also low-cost housing for affordable housing developers. It's in addition to eliminating GST for first-time home buyers on homes at or under $1 million. It's also helping to, along the lines of the Housing Accelerator Fund, to looking at cutting municipal development funds, supporting housing conversions in other areas where we can just get houses built faster. The goal is 500,000 houses per year. And for rental supports, the conversion of existing structures into affordable housing and various supports to go into that. So a lot of progress, but a huge need that we need to continue to accelerate. And I'm excited about this $25 billion housing plan Canada-wide that I think we will see great progress in the North in the years to come. Thank you.
Question 4. So the order this time will begin with the Liberal Party, and then the Green Party, and then ending with NDP. Given the renewed national interest in Arctic sovereignty and growing concerns about international relations, plus unstable tariff situations between the U.S. and Canada, please describe any additional measures that your party has planned to protect and value our natural resources, our local workers, and the growing economy that we see in the Yukon. Starting with Brendan Haney, Liberals.
Thank you. This is like talking about everything in one question. So there's a lot to unpack here. I'll try to give a few highlights. Certainly the Yukon and the North are central to Canada's strategic future. Yukoners have always known that. Northerners have always known that. But if you think of the North in terms of natural resources, vast areas of wilderness, natural beauty, fresh water, a vital area for defense and continental security, we have a lot of what the world is looking at right now. At a high level, I'm going to skip over Arctic sovereignty and hopefully come back to it. But at a high level, the U.S. and Canada, the approach is as follows. Team Canada, continuing to develop those necessary relationships and trust building with U.S. counterparts and business leaders to convince the U.S. administration that tariffs are in no one's interest. Meanwhile, strategically positions countermeasures that we're seeing now that hit hard at focus parts of the U.S. economy while minimizing the effects to our own economy, but ensuring that revenue from those countermeasures comes back to support businesses and workers. And finally, supporting our own economic sovereignty, removing interprovincial trade barriers and accelerating that, committing to that with the premiers around the country, and decreasing our economic dependence on the U.S. There are also, in terms of worker support, specific measures around EI access, waiving the first week waiting period, other measures to make access to EI for affected workers easier. Speaking of workers, there is also the skilled worker benefit now, $8,000 to create more training opportunities in skilled trades, which is really part of, again, developing our own skilled workforce to address the challenges that we have. Natural resources, there's a lot to cover there, and if I were to summarize it, perhaps it would be that we need to continue with responsible harvesting of what we have to offer in terms of critical minerals and precious minerals, precious metals, but that has to go hand in hand with environmental stewardship and climate leadership. In terms of Arctic sovereignty, I think what I'll say is this is a broad area, and it's about protecting the threats, not just security and military threats, important as they are, but threats from climate. So how do we build dual-use infrastructure? How do we work with First Nation partnerships? How do we secure housing and the supporting infrastructure, and while maintaining a solid defense and keeping the North at the top of the conversation and keeping Northerners involved in these critical conversations. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
Well, I'm very proud to say that so far the only party leader who came up north for the campaign is Jonathan Pendo, who is the co-leader of the Green Party. And so Jonathan came, was it Monday, 2 weeks ago, to announce a plan for a new national civil defense corps of 100,000 members. And this new National Civil Defense Corps will create new jobs in emergency preparedness, and it will also beef up our response for emergencies and threats. And by emergencies, we can talk about forest fire here up north, flood, but also threat to our national security. We do know that in the Arctic, there is possibility of new shipping routes, and we have different countries and big corporations who are eyeing that shipping routes. So let's be prepared for this, and this is exactly what this new plan is for. It's to make sure that we are ready, that we are proactive and not reactive. It's not about militarization of our country. It's a complement of what we already have, and it's focusing on civilian protection. And it's mostly to make sure that we do have knowledge, that we have skills locally to be ready to face those emergencies and challenges. We do want to increase our resiliency from the ground up. We also have in this plan a measure to expand the reserve forces by 20,000 members, and this is to align better with what our democratic allies already have. So let's do our part here. And the plan also includes increased funding for our Canadian Rangers. And I know that here in the Yukon, we're very proud of what the Canadian Rangers are doing, and we all have a friend or two who is part of the Canadian Rangers. So I think this is great news for Yukoners that the Green Party wants to in this plan increase the funding for our Canadian Rangers. Thank you.
Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world that is not within our control right now. Trump is going to Trump. He's going to Trump every day for the next 4 years or 3.5 years until he is not the United States president anymore. It's really easy to be scared, and it's really easy to watch the news and feel like you don't have any control over what's going on. And I know that everybody is worried about what he's going to do next, and I am terrified about what he's going to do next. So the one thing that we can do is focus on the things that are within our control. The things that are within our control is making sure that the economy of Canada is a strong economy and that the workers in Canada are taken care of. We need an economy that works for people and not for corporations and the powerful. The NDP is going to close tax loopholes for the rich and end subsidies for big oil and gas companies and make sure that working people have jobs and housing and health care and security, just like we always have. Working people are at the heart of our economy and at the heart of our community, and right now those workers are worried about their futures and the security of their country. Our plan is to protect your jobs. The NDP has a plan to buy Canadian and build Canadian, to make employment insurance more accessible and make it work for contractors and self-employed folks as well, and increase the benefit level to 2/3 of insurable earnings. We would create a jobs war room, which would include union and businesses in provinces and territories to work together as an organized front to pressure the U.S. government to back down on tariffs. Thank you.
Question number 5. And in this case, we will be going down the line starting with NDP, then Liberal, and then the Green Party. Unions play a crucial role in making life better for all workers, but many workers in Yukon do not yet have the benefit or protection of a union. How would you involve unions in shaping labor policies and economic decisions? Additionally, how would you make it easier for workers to unionize? Starting with Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. I've been a unionized worker for 18 years in Canada, and before that I was a member of the Australian Actors Equity Association. To say that I believe in unions is a massive understatement. Unions and labor organizations are a fundamental part of the NDP, and we are the party of organized labor by design. We have always worked with organized labor to make life better for working people, and we will continue to do so. I know the importance of organized labor in Canadian life, and I would fight to ensure that labor leaders have a seat at the table whenever policy is being created. Everyone in Canada has the right to form or join a union, to bargain and go on strike should they need to. That's why the NDP brought in anti-scab legislation. I would protect workers from being intimidated when they want to form a union by maintaining the card check option for unionizing. And if you send me to Ottawa, we can do so much more for workers and for union members across the country. Thank you.
Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
Thank you. It's been a real learning experience for me over the last few years because I didn't have a personal experience as being a member of a union, being a physician. So I had a lot to learn, and I learned from many people in this room from regular meetings with union or labor organized representatives, but also at national level. And I think one of the most perhaps close examples was working with Linda Silas, who is head of the Canadian Nurses Federation, and we worked together on many of the aspects of the health workforce crisis that I referred to earlier. So I think that listening, that learning, and that working with union and labor representatives has been incredibly important. Our party has supported workers in repealing anti-union laws, modernizing the Canadian Labour Code, for example, and I know as a party that as we continue to ensure workers, when we're going through this building of our own economic sovereignty, rebuilding Canada, investing in infrastructure, that we will be working closely with workers to ensure that we do it right. Having now been the Yukon's MP through several quite troubling labor disputes, whether it's the Vancouver port or the Canada postal strike. These are incredibly difficult, incredibly costly, incredibly difficult on the workers and on industry at the same time. We need to do as much as we can to prevent these by putting in place good practices in the first place. I just wanted to mention the Union Training and Innovation Program was also where we recently doubled the investment there. So I will continue to learn, continue to listen, and look forward to continuing to work with labor and union representatives. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
At the Green Party, we were always and still are strong supporter of worker unions and collective bargaining. One of the key priorities of the Green Party is working towards a clean energy transition. And when we work at this very important goal, we know that we will create jobs, good jobs in clean energy economy. And we do want these jobs to be well paid, but also to be in sustainable industry, because this is a great benefit for workers, stability in sustainable industry. This winter, we learned that the federal Liberal government made cut in the Yukon nominee programs. And at the Green Party, we would like to improve programs instead of cutting them or reducing them. And a way to do this is to offer better resources for our employees, to offer them fair, decent working conditions.
All right, we are moving on to our last prepared question, which means your questions will be coming shortly. So for this last question that we have to the candidates, the order is going to be following from me down the line. So Green Party, Liberal Party, and ending with NDP. Can you give specific examples of how you have stood up for workers' rights against corporate interests? And starting with Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
This is a very good question, and I would like to cast a wider net. And I will start by saying that I have worked for corporations, I have worked for governments, and I am now self-employed. And as a self-employed contractor, I was doing work for Victoria Gold Corporation, the owner of the Eagle Mine outside of Mayo. And we all know what happened in June of last year at the Eagle Mine. The big rock slide at the mine, and I was doing work in the weeks before that. I was extremely lucky to have my invoice paid the night before the rock slide. Many more were not lucky as me. And we're still not sure what happened at the mine that night in June 2024, but we know that something very wrong happened. And now we have to deal with severe environmental degradation of our economy, and workers without jobs, and local businesses with lost revenues. And so this is a clear indication that economic consideration cannot be separated from workers' interests. And when we do, we suffer the consequences. And in that same vein, economic considerations cannot be separated from the environment. And we have seen the disconnection over and over again in the last decades in our past. And that's why we're hitting a wall now with climate change, is that we cannot do business as usual anymore. And when we keep those two things together, the environment and the economy, everyone benefits, you and I and our workers as well. So we do need to stand up to the big corporations. We do need to stand up to the big emitters and polluters and keep them accountable for you and me, but for all workers. Thank you.
Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
Thank you, and I'll draw out a big picture for a moment as before focusing in more specifically. And I think again, this is where I think a Mark Carney government would have something very interesting to offer. Again, in kind of resetting the balance between values and the market. So when he talks about building Canada, and investing in the infrastructure that we need, nation-building projects, it's about putting values first and market second, but leveraging the vast market potential that we have to build not only infrastructure but Canada's economic sovereignty. So I think it's really looking to place Canadian values, people's values first, and using the market second. Specifically, on the role, I can think of two examples, and again, these are more on the legislative side. But Bill C-58 was passed in this last parliamentary session, and that's the anti-SCAP legislation. And so that's an act to revise the scope of replacement workers during labor disputes. Significant, and I still remember the pride and the joy of Minister O'Regan, Seamus O'Regan, when we passed this bill, as it happened unanimously at third reading. So, saved by the bell. Yeah. The second area I just wanted to mention was the Canada Workers Benefit. So that, although that was originally introduced under another name in 2007, we significantly reintroduced this bill under the Canada's Workers Benefit to support low-income workers, including a disability component to that, and that was in the 2018. So I think there's obviously that wasn't my direct involvement, but I think there is a legacy there of supporting and trying to achieve that balance of workers' rights and workers' supports with industry to support the overall economic progress and direction of our country. Thank you.
And Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. It's scary when you're being treated unfairly at work, when you're afraid of losing your job, when you've done nothing wrong. When I worked at Jazz Aviation, I was bullied by management. I worked for nearly a decade without being dragged into a disciplinary meeting. I was a hard worker and I was a good worker, and I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I checked you all in to go on your vacations. In the last 6 months of my 10.5-year employment at Jazz Aviation, I was dragged into several disciplinary meetings because they wanted to push me out for being too expensive. I was also called in at 4 o'clock in the morning out of the blue when the phone rang, and I always answered it because my family lived in Australia and my parents were aging, and of course you answer your phone, but if you answer your phone, you're being called into work and you're being forced to go. Even though I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old at home, I still had to somehow find a babysitter at 4 o'clock in the morning to go into my job, because I had to decide between losing my job or being called into a disciplinary meeting or looking after my tiny children. Nobody should have to make a decision like that. I became a union rep at my work to protect myself from management bullying and to protect my fellow workers and fight against the two-tier wage system and other unfair practices. For the past 10 years, I have worked a lot in the NGO sector. I started a theatre company and I worked as the leader of a nonprofit organization. As a worker in the NGO sector, we don't have benefits. We don't have sick pay. We don't have any of the things that are the privilege of people who do work in unionized settings. The Chamber of Commerce does offer a benefits package for small businesses, and I've been working tirelessly with other NGOs in the community to try and pull together so that we can work together to get access to the same kinds of benefits that government workers have. NGOs do the work of the government, and their workers should have the same benefits. In the last parliament, the NDP made good on their long-standing promise to end the practice of scab labour by forcing the Liberal government to implement anti-scab legislation. And this will help to protect workers' jobs when they go on strike and make sure they can negotiate on equal footing with the employer. The NDP is the party that supports organised labour. Full stop. Thank you.
All right, we are halfway through our evening. If you are sitting on your chair, it's a good time to shuffle or straighten your back or roll your shoulders or move around a little bit. We are going to be moving into your questions next. So thank you for your responses so far. This has been lovely. Hopefully you've got a good idea of what your parties are presenting to you. I do want to take a pause for this moment and just thank our volunteers here this evening. You can recognize them by their purple shirts. So purple shirts, just give a wave. Thank you, you guys, for volunteering. These purple shirts are some of your hard-working unionized workers serving in Yukon, volunteering their time here tonight. I also want to give a shout-out and a thanks to NVD and the Gold Rush Inn for this lovely space, to Gunta Business for our technical expertise here, and as well to Omni Sound and David for our timing. And I also want to thank PSAC, which is the Public Service Alliance of Canada, Yukon Area Council, for their sponsorship towards this evening. So we now move into the next part of our agenda, where the candidates are going to respond on the spot to your biggest questions. We want to remind you that even though we can't get to every question brought forward, we will pass them along to the candidates in an effort to post written responses later on our website. We also invite those of you who are here in person to stay after the formal debate has ended if you would like to speak to the candidates yourselves. And now I'm on the spot too as we read your questions. So, the ground rules are the same as follows. We will still follow the clock, and we have a timekeeper on site. The candidates each have 3 minutes to provide a response, and we will continue to rotate the order of who goes first. So for the first question, we will be starting with Brendan Hanley, then moving to Catherine McCallum, and ending with Gabrielle Dupont. The question is, where does your party stand on the issue in Gaza and the West Bank? And what specific strategies would you take to end the genocide and bring humanitarian aid to Gazans? Starting with Brendan Hanley, the Liberal Party.
Well, thank you for the question. This has probably been the single most emotional issue when I've been talking about this with or hearing from Yukoners over the last 2 years, and certainly one that continues to be completely vexing. And I think there are a few things that are that I could say are fairly well established. If I look to what my party has stated, and that Canada, big picture, continues to call out illegal settlements in the West Bank, continues to advocate for a ceasefire, which has, of course, recently been broken by Israeli actions. To continue to advocate for a two-state solution as the ultimate solution for this war. What I will say on a more personal note is that we are seeing repeated violations of international humanitarian law in Israeli actions in its efforts to eliminate Hamas, and the civilian toll continues to be devastating and unacceptable. These violations include repeated targeting of civilians, of aid workers, of humanitarian and medical facilities, the cutting off of humanitarian aid, the interference with fresh water supply, the blockade to access to aid. And we are now facing an even more serious scenario, because whereas the only country that significantly had leverage over Israelis' actions was the United States, who has now basically checked out of their responsibility in working with Israel, and perhaps being at least somewhat of a modifier in Israel's actions. So it's an extremely troubling scenario. There could be many more minutes, but I see that my time is running out. Happy to discuss this further at another occasion.
Catherine McCallum, NDP. And let me know if you need me to repeat the question, because I know this one's not in front of you.
Certainly.
That's a yes? You want the question?
Yes.
Oh,
please.
okay, here we go. Where does your party stand on the issue in Gaza and the West Bank? And what specific strategies would you take to end the genocide and bring humanitarian aid to Gazans?
Thank you. The NDP's stance on the genocide in Gaza is that genocide is never okay. We need to pressure the US and other countries to stop funding the genocide. No children should die at the hands of greed and capitalism and warmongering. We need more funding for humanitarian aid. And PSAC has just reiterated its call for an immediate arms embargo on Israel. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
So at the Green Party, we are a non-violent party, and our approaches are always towards peaceful resolution. And again, at the Green Party, we do want to emphasize solutions on international laws, human rights, again, peaceful resolution to guide us on this conflict. And this is what we will continue to do. Thank you.
All right, question number 2 from our audience. And the order this time will start with Catherine McCallum, NDP, then moving on to Gabrielle of the Green Party, and Brendan Hanley, Liberals, will be last. The next question is, how does your party intend to seriously and effectively transition to clean energy or renewable energy in the light of the ongoing climate crisis?
Thank you. The first thing we need to do is make sure that large corporations and big oil and gas companies and the top 5% of earners in Canada are paying their way. We need to make sure that we are closing tax loopholes and getting rid of subsidies so that we can have the income and the revenue from those taxes in order to reinvest in making it affordable for the average person to retrofit their homes and to buy green EVs and to create greener and more renewable energy sources at on the home front. Too often, the onus is put onto the shoulders of everyday Canadians to shoulder the brunt of the responsibility for making greener choices, and it should not fall to us to do that. We certainly can take part in doing our bit every day, but in terms of being able to afford truly greener measures, we need to make sure that the big wigs at the top are paying into the tax system so that we can afford to help people subsidize the changes that they can make on a daily basis. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
So the clean energy transition, this is one of my priorities for this campaign in the Yukon. And so I will start by saying that here in the Yukon, we're quite lucky. We already have hydro dams, we already have wind and solar energy, and so we're really not that far from being 100% renewable, or at least getting as close as we can to this target. And as a Green MP, I would love to champion projects that will get us there. And we recently heard about Yukon Energy, their plans to have, more diesel generators or more thermal plants. And this is absolutely the wrong directions to take right now. And again, I do not believe that this is necessarily their preferred route to go at Yukon Energy. And so as my job as a Green MP for the Yukon, I would champion projects that will get us there, that will get us on the track of our clean energy transition. Because again, we're not that far, but we do need to keep working on this in the Yukon. Thank you.
Brendan Hanley, the Liberal Party.
I'll give a little bit of local perspective and then more of a national perspective, because again, as Gabrielle says, we are in a fairly fortunate position to be about 90% using renewable, 90, 91, 92% renewable. But the remaining few percentages is where it becomes more difficult. Having said that, we have federally supported many renewable projects around the Yukon, including the Old Crow Solar project. There is work on an even bigger solar project in White River and Beaver Creek. There's also the Kluane turbine, which recently just started in action, and the KDFN wind projects. There's tremendous further potential for renewables. In the shorter term and medium term, though, we need to fix and support the stability of our existing energy infrastructure. So we do have that dynamic to work on the infrastructure that we have, plus bring in new and renewable projects as we go, including the potential for the Atlan Hydro project. On a national level, there are components to Mark Carney's plan to bring Canada up to really being a leading clean energy superpower. And that's kickstarting the energy supply chain by investing in critical minerals. It's getting clean energy projects started and fast-tracked, so again, looking for where we can overcome some of the redundancies and gaps in permitting and assessing, so that we can work with provinces and territories to increase our energy sovereignty and getting projects underway. And it's also in working on east-west electricity grid connections. We also, of course, in the north, have invested recently $40 million in the feasibility study for connecting us in the north to the national grid, so increasing our the reliability of our grid. So nation-building clean energy electricity projects are part of developing us into a sovereign clean energy superpower. Thank you.
Question 3 from our audience. This time the order will be starting with Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party, then Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party, and then third will be Catherine McCallum, NDP. So the next question put to you is, the CRTC, the Canadian Radio Television Commission, has regulations prohibiting the distribution of fake news. How much of a priority does your party intend to make on combating the spread of misinformation for all forms of publications? I'm going to read that one a second time because there's a lot in there. So the CRTC, Canadian Radio Television Commission, has regulations prohibiting the distribution of fake news. How much of a priority does your party intend to make on combating the spread of misinformation for all forms of publications? And we're starting with Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
Thank you for the question. I would say that, and this is such an important question, misinformation and disinformation are becoming increasingly prevalent, and it's increasingly hard, especially when we are seeing polarization of beliefs and attitudes, becoming increasingly hard to find and to be able to access reliable forms of public information. So some of this lies in regulation, some of it lies in other areas of how we need to manage this. One area that I think we need to support is actually education, and to emulate what is happening in many other countries, some of the Scandinavian countries, Taiwan, for example, where it really is part of civics education, is learning how to be a critical thinker, how to assess information, because this will find ways to come at us. We need to be reliable. We need to be educated consumers of content. Regulation, whether it's through online misinformation, is also important, and we did not finish with I think it was C69, but the online harms. But there are other areas where I think we need to just have good modern regulation, emulating again other examples around the world of where this has been this has been applied. Using AI also as a tool to help us, perhaps ironically, but AI can be a tool to help us actually sieve out misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation being the deliberate propagation, whereas misinformation is not necessarily deliberate. So I was going to say one more area is supporting public broadcasting and supporting community-based media. So we worked to reestablish the local journalism initiative. We need to keep at federal level making sure that funding and investments are available for community-based media. And I stand by the efforts and the announcements on what we will be doing to support public broadcasting through CBC and Radio Canada funding. Thank you.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
So we do want, at the Green Party, we do want to support our local news because they are a key solution to this problem. And we do know that right now they are struggling, and they've been struggling for quite a bit. We have seen what happened with the Whitehorse Star, and a little bit later the Yukon Star. This is very sad for the Yukon to lose local publication like these ones, because we do trust our local media, we do trust our local journalists, and we should support them in their good job that they're providing to our communities. And one way to support them, to support our local media, is with proper funding, proper grants to keep them going. We really need to invest in our local media to keep them alive. And another component is to make sure that CBC and Radio Canada is properly funded, because we do value CBC. We do know that they are providing quality information to Canadians, to Yukoners. So let's make sure that we do have this priority in our funding programs for the CBC and also our local news. Thank you.
Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. Sorry, still scribbling notes. So, honestly, I find it really terrifying what's out there right now. My children, my 19 and 21-year-old children, are getting the news from TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, which means that they're being stuck in an algorithm that just keeps feeding them what they want to hear. And the more they watch, the deeper they get. I just can't even imagine where we're going in the next 12 months or 10 years, and I think something really needs to be done about it. I think the CBC and independent journalism is essential, and we need to fund and encourage independent journalism as much as possible. We can't abide losing journalists through bullying and intimidation. A pretty bad example at the moment is how difficult it is for journalists to currently cover the Conservative campaign right now, and how they're being restricted from asking questions. I think it's also really interesting and terrifying to note the North Koreaification of information and journalism in the US that is currently happening. Free and fair and independent journalism is an absolute essential for any democracy, and we should do everything that we can to protect it. Thank you.
All right, the next question from our attendees will first be going to the Green Party, then NDP, ending with Liberals. So this question is, how does your party plan to account for the loss in revenue from tax cuts and other austerity measures? What public services would be cut? So the question again is, how does your party plan to account for the loss in revenue resulting from tax cuts and other austerity measures? What public services would be cut? And we will be starting with Gabrielle Dupont, the Green Party.
Well, with the Green Party, there will not be cuts. That's pretty easy. So I mentioned earlier at the Green Party, we have one measure about cost of living, the problem of high cost of living. So at the Green Party, we do want to remove federal income tax on the first $40,000 of income. And how do we do that? How do we fund a measure like this one? Well, we, like I mentioned earlier, we make sure that the big corporations, the big companies are paying their taxes, because right now they're using intricate schemes and loopholes for not paying their taxes. And this is particularly true for banks and big tech. And anyone in the audience here who might be owning any Canadian bank stocks, we know that they're doing very well. Thank you very much. And we would love to see these banks paying their fair share of taxation, so we Canadians and Yukoners can also do very well. So yeah, let's get fair taxations for Canadians through these closing these loopholes for the big company and big corporations. Thank you.
Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. So if my kids have to pay tax on their $17.94 an hour, big corporations should also be paying into the system that supports us. The loss in revenue from tax cuts and other austerity measures and which services to cut is not the question. The question is, when are we going to start taxing big oil and gas companies and large corporations and making the wealthiest 1% of this country pay into the system that supports the rest of us? We are losing up to $20 billion a year to offshore tax havens, and it's totally unacceptable. And that's all I have to say on the matter.
Brendan Hanley, Liberal Party.
So this is where I think that the degree makes a lot of difference. And so a modest tax cut of the 1% off the marginal tax rate is a distinct contrast to the 2.5% tax cut that is being proposed by the Conservative Party. And the question for the person on the left here would be what programs will in fact be cut. I think with a 1% tax cut combined with Mark Carney's plan of separating operating fiscal a fiscal operating budget from the infrastructure investment project is a good way to put it. So in other words, we need to spend on investment, and we need to stimulate the huge potential of the market. So again, coming back to the values first, market second, and using the market to be able to afford the significant investments that we need to make in nation building and infrastructure around the country, while maintaining a more modest, accountable, and ultimately neutral operating budget. I think it's using that mechanism of stimulating market investment, putting values first, investment second, that will be able to make us able to manage a modest tax cut that will give an immediate break to working families. Thank you.
All right, we got time for maybe one or two more. So going sort of on the other direction from the last question, the next question is, with our growing Yukon population, how might you improve our public services? The question is, what do you envision for Yukoners and Yukon workers? Would your party support full public services in Yukon, including Service Canada, immigration, or CRA offices? So again, the question is, with our growing Yukon population, what improvements do you envision for Yukoners and Yukon workers? Would your party support full public services in Yukon, including Service Canada, immigration, or CRA offices? And this question is going to start with Brendan Hanley, the Liberal Party, going to NDP, and then the Greens.
Again, this is a question that I wouldn't be able to give an official party response to. I think it's just recognizing where are the needs and how do we meet those needs. So one of the successes we've had recently was in managing to bring back an immigration service here. That is a service that's available for employers, which has proven extremely useful for employers to be able to help employers navigate the federal pathways available for employees who are either potential immigrants or here on work permits. It's also having a Northern CRA line, for instance, so that there is for people with questions about how to access or having troubles with CRA, a northern specific line has proven to be more accessible. So I think it's looking for these are things that we've been able to advocate for in land. The 10-day passport service. Again, has been a significant improvement in the last 2 years to federal services. So I think where we have been able to improve services here, it's not always just about the growing population. It's about what are the actual needs, where are they being met or not. And I'll certainly be happy to do my part to advocate for more on the ground services where we can show that there's a need that is not being met. Thank you.
Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you. This is not a subject on which I am particularly well versed. But I do think that in order to provide any new services or any further services, we need to look at where the holes are, where we're falling down, and where new and extended services are needed, and getting all stakeholders at the table to discuss how to move forward and making sure that there are people at the table who have to deal with these issues on a daily basis and making sure that we're including everybody in the conversation before we make any decisions to move forward. I would also say that with the growing population in the Yukon, we really need to be focused on the housing, the healthcare, the dental care, the pharmacare, and the childcare for everybody that's moving here, because those are also services that are absolutely essential. Thank you.
Well, with that, we are now going to be able to move. Oh, I missed one. Oh, I jumped too fast. My notes are too fast here. Okay, so yes, we are now going to Gabrielle Dupont, the Green Party.
So we are a remote population here in the Yukon, and it's not like we can go next door to get those services. So yes, it's important to have a full range of services from our federal government here in the Yukon, and we have seen cuts in the past. I believe it was the CRA office in Whitehorse that suffered from cuts, and these cuts were felt. And so, as a Green MP, I would like to champion these services in the Yukon, coming back of the services that were cut, and enhancing the offers as well. Thank you.
All right. Now with that, we're going to move into final remarks. So I'd like to invite each of the candidates to offer final remarks of up to 3 minutes each, starting with the opposite of our opening statements. So we will begin with Catherine McCallum, the NDP, followed by Liberals, and then the Greens. Catherine McCallum, NDP.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a really long night, and I really appreciate everybody being so respectful and listening so intently to what we have to say. I have extensive experience in the private and public and not-profit sectors. It has been a long, long night. And the non-profit sectors, often in a unionized setting. Throughout my career, I've been an advocate for and a voice for working people, for women, and for people who have had to struggle against the oppressive and the powerful. My theatre productions have often been political in content, focusing on telling powerful stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm running in this election to continue to be a voice for people who feel let down by the system, who are working hard but not getting ahead, and for those who know that as a society, we need to do better. In this election, the NDP is fighting to protect what makes Canada, Canada. Public health care, homes you can afford, and a country where nobody gets left behind. That's the Canada I wanted to live in. That's the Canada I came to be a Canadian citizen of. And that's the Canada I would fight for in Ottawa. This is a country built by people who believed in something better and fought for it, and it's time to do that again. When you vote NDP, good things happen in Canada. We deliver dental care, pharmacare, anti-scab legislation, and affordable childcare with just 25 MPs. Imagine what we could do with more. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the rising cost of living and by global uncertainty, the NDP does have your back. Vote NDP to protect what matters to you. Vote NDP to stand up for workers and ensure they don't pay for Donald Trump's incessant chaos. Vote NDP to cap grocery prices, rents, and to hire more doctors and nurses. And I hope that on April 28th, you'll trust me and the NDP with your very important vote. Thank you.
Brendan Hanley, the Liberal Party.
Thank you all for this opportunity, it has been quite a grilling, and that's really important for how we prepare to be representatives of the Yukon. And I think now that I've had the privilege of being the Yukon's MP for 3.5 years, I think I've learned a few things. I've learned how to partner with others and to be able to work, whether it's across the aisle or with like-minded colleagues, to be able to advocate effectively for Yukon's needs, concerns, and priorities. I know how to listen. I know how to focus. I know how to use the parliamentary tools to raise an issue and to bring resolution to problems, as well as to bring funding and supports back into the Yukon. People are afraid and people are excited. People are afraid at what's happening in the U.S., the unraveling that we're seeing of democracy, and the undoing of an incredibly important friend and alliance. The people are afraid of the economic chaos that this is already causing and is likely to cause over the next few years. People are excited by Mark Carney, because Mark Carney is bringing the ability to lead through economic crises that he has demonstrated as governor of the Bank of 2 leading G7 countries. He knows how to be calm. He knows how to take on an adversary, which he has already shown, and he knows economics probably like no other leader at the moment. So I'm excited, and people are excited with what he has to offer, with the ability to defend Canada's economic sovereignty, to defend Canada's national sovereignty. So I am looking forward, if given the chance, to be able to not just continue as Yukon's advocate and Yukon's MP, but to be able to work under the direction and the leadership and the renewed vision of Mark Carney government. So I would very much appreciate your support in helping Yukon to get there and Canada to get there. Thank you very much.
Gabrielle Dupont, Green Party.
Is it working now? Yeah, okay, thank you. First, I would like to thank the Yukon Federation of Labour for organizing this debate, and to thank everyone in the audience for coming tonight. It's a Monday night, so it's not easy. We might feel powerless with what's happening in the world right now, but also in the country and even here in the Yukon. And I know there is a lot of anxiety about climate change as well, lots of anxiety from our youth, but also from Yukoners from all walk of life. Climate change is a massive challenge for us, and I really want to keep the conversation about climate change front and center. And I would like to remind everyone here that if there's one day when all the power is in our own hands, is right now, is during election, is on election day, or whenever you decide to vote. So please vote for what you believe in. Please vote for the values that are important for you. And more importantly, please vote for the future that you want to see. Thank you.
So on that note, and in closing, we do have a few quick reminders on how you can vote. So you can vote in person at any Elections Canada office until 6 p.m. Tuesday, April 22nd. The Elections Canada offices are in Whitehorse, Dawson, and Watson Lake. Please pick up an info sheet at our table on your way out, or you can visit elections.ca. And I think we're going to show on the screen here for those in the room, and hopefully those of you online can visit that website. The advanced polls will be available over the coming holiday weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, April 18th to the 21st, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for in-person voting. We encourage you to prepare to vote by going to elections.ca and enter your postal code. There you can easily find out where to vote, what pieces of ID you need to vote, are you registered to vote, and of course, who are the candidates in your electoral district. And just a reminder that this year, our federal election day is also the National Day of Mourning on April 28th. You are all invited to join the Yukon Federation of Labour for a ceremony at Shipyards Park at the Yukon Workers Memorial at 12 noon. So this concludes our event for this evening. I want to extend a sincere thank you to our candidates for joining us tonight. And of course, to all of you who have tuned in to hear from these candidates. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Get out to vote.